We're recording. All right. Thank you, Elias, once again for taking the time. I know it's very late in Australia, so we appreciate the time.
Yeah, pleasure's all mine.
So first thing I need to ask you this: Verdum and Colby Covington just got into, a boomerang scuffle on the streets of Sydney. What do you think about that?
Well, worst off, I don't think it was a Reebok approved boomerang, so I think there might be double issue for that. No, obviously violence doesn't pay until it does in mixed martial arts.
Right.
We are ambassadors. I understand Verdum's upset, like why he's upset, especially being so close to his fight. But I still think, when someone, sticks and stones will break your bones, but boomerangs could hurt you. And I think it just honestly, it feeds into Kobe's desire to get attention. You know what I mean? Whether you love him or hate him, he's taking the Conor McGregor route, and I won't even say Conor McGregor. I just say the shit talking route, because Conor McGregor is at least good at it.
Yes.
It is what it is. It's unfortunate because I think it's a kind of a little bit of a stain on mixed martial arts, and especially with broader issues of us trying to be as mainstream as possible. It just doesn't look good. We don't look like professionals.
Right, and as you said, obviously there's different levels that you do on social media. You, for example, often interact with the fans, but you're respectful in that sense. Do you think there's this onus now with WME IMG especially coming in for the fighters to just market themselves more than ever before?
Well, again, yes, but I think it's done in the wrong way. Like, I've been very successful in regards to branding myself with actual brand partners and not just, attaching yourself to, a negative incident, a negative conversation, whatever the case may be. I was happy to announce my most recent partnership with Mattel, which
Right.
is the 200th largest company in the world. So again, that with Per Plus or Samsung. I'm also a brand ambassador for the phone, which I'm using at this moment. Again, it's you partner yourself with brands that actually pay. But at the same time, Kobe is getting attention and he's working his way up and he's still winning fights. So all the power to him, and do you. I'm just going to do me, the more polite Canadian way.
Right, and talking about the Mattel deal, how did that come through?
How did...
The Mattel deal?
Yeah, no, funny story. It was actually through my... Oh, there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Oh, you just did a little glitch there. But so basically, every quarter I have a meet with my sponsor, Pert, and right when the Man Bun Ken came out, I did a little edit with my, and that's what my avatar is, just superimposing my face on Man Bun Ken. And it was funny because Pert saw that and was like, we love it, just legal's a little bit concerned because, a parody, they could be upset about it. Anyways, funny story, right after I posted it, or had the conversation with them, rather, the PR team actually reached out for me and said, love your sense of humor, love what you do, would love for you to help us relaunch the Rock'em Sock'em Robot brand and board game. So it's starting there, and if all goes well, there might be a Man Bun Elias, Elias in the works.
Awesome, sounds good. So how is Sydney to do? Because this is the first time that you're going to fight outside of outside of North America, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. Obviously, I'm in I'm home turf of my opponent, but at the same time, there's a big Greek following, and everyone here in Australia has been so great. I won Canada versus Australia, so I do have a following in that regards. And I like to look at, and I've said this a couple times already, but I like to look at Australians as Canadians with funny accents, although they can say the same about us.
Right now, just since you brought that up, how was your experience during the entire TUF Nation season, which you won?
I loved it. Obviously, I'm a little biased. I won it, like you just said. So there's that capacity. If I got knocked out in 13 seconds in my first fight, it would have been a little different. And that's where you can cue into Dan Kelly. He is a tough individual. He got picked up and slammed and choked out in minimal amounts of seconds, but kept on pushing. And that's kind of his fight style. Fights like a zombie, but at the same time, is one tough SOB. He's 40 years old, has been to the Olympics 4 times, and is still competing. But at the same time, I'm going to show him what the difference between a mixed martial artist is to a specialist.
Right, as you said, he's a former Olympic level judoka. But do you think people kind of look down or underestimate someone like Dan Kelly because of his age, because of the problems he's had previously with injuries? Do you think that's the case?
For sure. But at the same time, I think there's also, some of his performances, he squeaked out wins off of Patrick Walsh, or whatever his name is. And then Chris Camozzi, I love him to death, but he's kind of like to me, infamous of giving up, like losing a fight that he's winning. And kind of like, he kind of gets lost in, let's say, like the lights or the, the situation. If someone takes him down quickly, he'll end up looking at the ref rather than getting up, and that's where I think I differ. I don't get sidetracked because I'm a mixed martial artist, and if it goes to the ground, I feel comfortable there. Obviously, learning from my last fight, I don't want to feel I'm too comfortable. I don't want to feel too comfortable giving my back. You saw that obviously with the Cesar Ferreira fight, where I gave up my back and then was able to get into a better position. Same thing with my last fight, but obviously being in a hometown judge or a hometown decision, it doesn't go your way sometimes. So learning from that, and I think, again, I just have more tools in my toolbox against Dan Kelly.
Right. Does that play into your mind? Because we saw Dan doing very well against someone like Rashad Evans very recently. Going into Australia, as you said, on his home turf, does that deter fighters from actually going the distance and try to finish the fight early?
Well, I want to finish the fight because I haven't finished since 2016. So, and I think, just knowing Dan and knowing his body and, knowing his style, I think there's a huge opportunity for me to go for the finish. And from what I've been working on, I really think I'm coming into my own in the sense of, I'm 29 years old. I've been training mixed martial arts for only 8 years, and 4 of those have been in the UFC. 5 or 6 of them have been professionally. And, it's only now at this point I'm kind of growing. And that's why I've not been too much of a rush to name people or, demand rise in the ranks, because I don't want to go up the ranks and then slowly fall and then, get a devastating finish out like Dan Kelly, who we talked about, went on that rise and then got a devastating blow because obviously Brunson showed that he doesn't deserve to be there.
Right. What are your expectations? Because as you said, Dan Kelly is ranked number 15 in the middleweight division at this point, and a win over him obviously will propel you into the top 15 of the rankings. What are your thoughts on just the entire state of the middleweight division at this point?
Well, it's interesting. Again, there's the component of it's one of the older divisions. The median age is now 36, and I'm 29, so I'm about, if you kind of go in between, I'm about 4 or 5 years from my prime. One would imagine, especially because of all the catch up that I have to do too. So it is what it is. It's kind of ebb and flow, but at the same time, I'm just going to kind of do me and focus on the fight ahead of me.
All right, and in 2017 especially, you've already fought twice, and this will be your 3rd fight, if I'm not wrong, in 2017. Is that kind of something that you've done as a calculated effort to kind of step up in 1 year to have as many fights as possible?
Well, it kind of just works out. I've been very lucky that no injuries. Again, as someone that may have, the role of playing catch up in regards to my skills. At the same time, I don't have the damage that other people have. An example, Dan Kelly.
All right, and again, I know it's getting pretty late, so we're gonna just wrap things up. Just what can the fans
No, it's all
expect?
good.
All right.
I think with the fans can expect me just doing me. I'm really excited to show what I've been working on, and death by 1,000 cuts.
All right, and just again going back into your kind of social media online presence, um, that kind of plays in two ways, where it's either the positive that comes out of it or the negative that comes out of it. What do you think about having so much presence online at this day and age?
Well, it's very important to attach yourself specifically to, for my case, a live event, which happens to be an event that I'm attached to in regards to my brand in the UFC, and it's fun. I started as a fan first, and then jumped into mixed martial arts, so I get to be both a fan and someone that has some kind of clout because I'm doing the damn thing.
Right, and talking about Dan Kelly a little bit now. We saw against Rashad Evans, and maybe not against Brunson, but against Evans, Dan showed really good range control. Made sure that there are no more leg kicks thrown at him, and he preferred to outbox someone like Rashad Evans. What do you think about the stylistic matchup between you two?
I just think I have more tools in my toolbox. I think you just said it. I think Rashad lost the fight, and Dan Kelly didn't win the fight. I think. It was a squeaked out split decision, but at the same time, Rashad's kind of a shell of what he used to be. He just stood in front of him, and in boxing range, like you said, Dan Kelly doesn't have power. He doesn't have accuracy. He kind of just throws and hits you in a dirty, grueling fashion. But I just think I have a lot more tools and a lot more fight in me than Rashad does now at this stage of his game.
Right, so again, someone like Dan Kelly, what do you think is the key component for you, the key area which you would like to exploit?
Well, I think it's just me doing me. I think I have a very unorthodox style, and if I don't know what I'm going to do next, how's he?
All right, fair enough. So going into the fight night, do you have any message for your fans in India?
Thank you for the support. It means the world, and looking to come out there sometime soon. Mixed martial arts, for me specifically, was all about the fighter's journey and traveling the world. And now I'm in Australia, but who knows? Maybe I'll be in India sometime soon.
All right, fantastic. Thank you once again, Elias. We appreciate the time.
My pleasure.
All the very best. Take care.
Take care.
Firstly, Kajan, thank you for taking the time to talk to us. It's been a pleasure. I mean, we talked before, obviously, regarding your career, what has happened previously. So it's a pleasure meeting you here.
Yeah, it was really cool to see you.
And the first thing, as you said, you've been to India before during SFL, and you was, telling me some stories about it. So, just how was the entire experience for you?
India was awesome, man. I really enjoyed it. It was really different, like just seeing how close like the city and the agriculture was. Like we were at like a 5-star hotel, and then you look out the window and there's a dude just like walking 12 cows across the street. Like that doesn't happen in Vancouver, Right. It was really cool, man. I really enjoyed it.
And what was the one memory that kind of sticks out for you during your entire trip?
If I had to pick one, it probably would be Coulter Gill losing his mind in the cage after the SFL fight, because it was like an interesting situation for him, right? Because he hadn't fought in a long time, so anytime that happens, you get a lot of nerves. And when he was fighting previously, I don't think he really cared that much if he won or lost. He was just like, he wanted to get paid. His body was broken, so he wasn't really trying to like put in hard camps or anything and train for like 2 weeks, go scrap. If he won, cool. If he didn't, cool. Give me my money. I'm going back to Canada, But now he was in this place where he had students, he had a gym built up, so he really wanted to inspire those guys and get them to look up to him even more. So he put a lot of pressure on himself, and he went and knocked the guy out in like, I don't know, a minute and a half or something. But he had all this like pent up nervous energy, and it had to come out somewhere. So in the post-fight interview, he just like freaked out, threw a microphone, stomped around. I tried to grab him to like calm him down, like, yo, chill out, and he didn't know it was me, and he just like woof, swings. That was a good thing. reflexes, right? So I faded back, and he booked, man. He booked out of the octagon, ran right through the cameraman, smashed the camera, ran to the back room, and I run after him, right? And he's in the back room. He's just like pacing around the room, like, I lost my mind. I lost my mind. I lost my mind. Fuck. So I go back, I fucking calm him down. Yeah, fuck. Insanity, man. Insanity. It was really, but that's what sticks out in my mind for sure the most. Not as much about India, but just like the crazy post-fight experience, you know?
Right. And, you know, before your fight, we kind of discussed about how it would be for you to come back after the long injury layoff. Once you got the victory, I mean, how did it kind of feel different for you? Because once you're training, once you know you're fighting in say 45 months, it feels natural for you. But coming from that long layoff, how did it feel?
Well, it's not something that I hadn't experienced before. Unfortunately, I've had several quite long layoffs in my career. A couple that have been 2 years long, a couple that have been 1 year long for injuries and various reasons. So I'm used to it. It's not something that's foreign to me, but still, like, it still plays in your mind because it's not a familiar situation anymore. You don't feel as comfortable with everything that lead up to the fight. But I just have if you can accept that, okay, I'm gonna be a little bit more nervous, or it's gonna feel a little bit different. It's not gonna feel exactly like last time. I'm not gonna remember everything exactly the same. If you can accept that, then it doesn't really have as much power over you. But if you fight against it and you're like, oh, I'm not nervous, oh yeah, I got this, whatever, and you don't really allow yourself to feel those feelings, then you're not really being honest, right? And that's one of the most important things in martial arts, is being honest with yourself, to be a very honest version of yourself. So if you're not doing that, you're not going to perform at your best. And because I was able to be so honest with myself and with everybody, I was able to perform at my best, and it was one of the best performances that I've had to date.
Right. Now, the recent podcast that you did, I kind of saw that you talked about a lot of aspects, including the McGregor showdown, the GSP, Bisping fight. And we recently had, and I wanted to discuss this with you, we recently had this hearing with Mark Ratner from the UFC, the Congress. Yeah. What do you think about the points that they discussed regarding the Ali Act, where Ratner said this is not needed because it's just the media and the fans that need to keep UFC in check?
But the thing is the media can't really keep the UFC in check, because the media has to answer to the UFC. If the UFC holds the carte blanche to just be like, okay, yeah, we don't like what you're doing, you're going to leave this situation, you're not ranking our fighters anymore, well then they kind of are held to what the UFC wants them to do. So it's not fair. The UFC has far too much control over the exclusive contracts, over the title, and especially over the rankings. There's no transparency whatsoever. We don't know what we're going to be making, what's being made off of us, really. So it's impossible for us to negotiate because we have no knowledge. If I don't know how big the pie is, how am I going to know how big my piece of the pie is, or should be, right? So yeah, I think that Congressman Mullen made a lot of really good points. I think I loved watching him grill Mark Ratner. Oh my God, I was like having kittens. It was amazing. It was incredible. Just watching him sweat, because he wasn't taking his shit. You know, Ratner was trying to portray a certain image and try to kind of confuse people with broad general statements, and Mullen just ripped into him. It was beautiful.
So again, you know, don't you think in MMA we have come kind of full circle? Because not too long ago we had the promoter saying you need to find the #1 contenders, and then it was McGregor that kind of led the charge, where he said, I have the title, it's the bargaining chip for me, so I'm going to fight what makes more sense for me as a fighter.
I don't think it's ever really been you have to fight the #1 contender. It's always kind of just been whatever fight makes the most sense to them. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. A lot of that is ticket sales. A lot of that is who do they like the best, who has the best fighting style. Like you see guys like John Fitch just win after win after win after win, and not really moving up the rankings like he should, because he's not finishing guys. Well, if you continually beat people, if are able to show that you are able to implement your game on whoever, doesn't matter who they are, they can't stop you from doing what you do, and you have a strategy that will beat them according to your rule set. If you don't like the way it works, then you have to change the rule set so that we have different rules and guidelines to fight under. But yeah, they've been notorious for not really wanting grapplers to hold their belts, and even situations before McGregor, like Chael Sonnen. You know, how do you get a title shot off of a loss? How does that happen? After you fight for one belt and then you lose, and then you talk a bunch of shit, and then you get to fight for a different belt against, like, what? On what planet is that?
And it's almost going to happen again with Nate Diaz and
of course. Of course, it's going to continually happen. Even like I love George. I think I would love to. I'm really happy that he has the 185-pound belt. But if it was a sport that we're talking about, that fight should not have happened yet. He should have at least had to have one comeback fight at 185 pounds before getting a shot at the title, especially when there's a deep division with a whole bunch of very viable title contenders, right? Like, if there was like nobody else there, then maybe, but really still no. They should still have to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, alternate down all the way down the line. Okay, nobody wants to fight. Okay, let's bring in George. That makes sense.
And
but
it's also crazy that you have an interim champion at 185, but the title belt is again being contested between two other guys.
Yeah, like, what is that? How is that a thing? What's even with these interim titles all the time? Yeah. Like, it doesn't even make sense. Like, you can't just, oh, we want more eyes on this fight. We need people to care. We know the layman, the average fan doesn't really know who people are as much. The average fan has very, very little knowledge of martial arts. So in order for them to get them excited, let's put a belt on it. They're fighting for this big shiny thing. Now everybody cares. Like, you can't do that, man. Not in a real sport. It's not a real sport. It's very, very, it's run like WWE right now. It's just unscripted WWE. The company just gets to do whatever they want, and there's nobody that's overseeing. There's zero oversight, and there's nobody that's fighting for us. There's nobody that's got our back. It's just us against the machine, and really, it's not very many of us against the machine. There's like 10 people fighting this machine, you know? Well, there's more than that. MMAFA has a big group of fighters. There's about 600 of us, but still, like, most of them are ex-UFC fighters. I'm the only one that's part of the MMAFA that is an active UFC fighter. There's a couple other people that are in the group and that are talking, but I don't think they're like about it, and they're definitely not like out there talking, being vocal. I don't understand why. Right. Because it's not about us, man. Like, I'm not doing this so I'm gonna make more money. If anything, this is putting my finances in jeopardy. Like, not winning bonuses, not getting ideal contracts, not getting ideal matchups. That's all a very real thing. But I'm okay with that, because it's not about me. It's about the next generation, and the generation after that, and the generation after that. In First Nations culture, which I grew up in. I grew up on the res, right? My stepdad was a chief, and like a sweat holder. So I grew up with a lot of the traditions, and the culture is kind of a part of me now. And we were taught that in everything that you do, you have to make sure that you're looking out for the next 7 generations in regards to the environment, in regards to the culture, in regards to the language, in regards to the health, in regards to everything, right? You have to look out for the next 7 generations. Well, we got to be doing the same thing in mixed martial arts. Right? It's not about me. It's not about Conor McGregor. It's not about George St. Pierre. It's about my students and my students' students and my students' students' students. And now's the time, man. Now's the time. If we don't do something right now about this, then we're looking at the next 7 generations to just become more and more enslaved. The machine getting more and more power and traction, and creating laws, because they're very good at lobbying through Congress. Like, they're spending, like, they spent a mil 5 right now, $1.5 million lobbying against the Ali Act, and they've changed a number of different rules in the United States system in order to favor whatever they wanted to do. And a lot of those have been good for all mixed martial artists, so I can't hate that they're doing that. But the ones that they're doing now and the ones that they will most likely do in the future will not be good for mixed martial artists. They're just tightening the grip. So before that grip gets into a fist, we got to do something, and that's now, man. That's now. That's not yesterday. That's not tomorrow. That's not in 10 years. 10 years is too late. It might already be too late. Really, the time was before the sale happened, before we got this massive conglomerate WME billion-dollar company, you know, before they owned it. But we didn't do it. We didn't do it. So now we got to do it now. If we don't do it now, it's never going to happen, and all the next generations are going to pay for it.
Right. So also, you know, talk me through this, because the Reebok sponsorship deal, once it kicked in, during the MSG card, George St. Pierre, who hasn't fought in the last 3 years, earned more through the Reebok sponsorship than someone like Jorge Masvidal, who has fought 10 times in the past 4 years in the UFC. How does that work? How does that sponsorship deal?
It's just a number of fights. If you have a certain number of fights for a promotion, then you get rated at a certain level. Like right now, I had 4 fights, so I'm still in the $2,500 range. Yay! Just balling, right? And then after my 5th fight, then I'll move up to the $5,000 range, and I'll be there until my 10th fight, and then I'll be in the $1,500 range or whatever, or $15,000 range, and it moves up, but it caps at 30 grand unless you're the champ, and then the champs get 40 grand.
But if I'm not wrong, George got about 38 or something like that before, because he was not the champion going into.
Yeah, he probably he's got a lot of power, right? Personally, he has a lot of power because of the audience that he commands, because of how many asses he'll put into seats. So when you put that many asses into seats, you have a certain amount of power. So George uses that amount of power, that leverage, in order to negotiate a contract that is more beneficial to him than the ones that we can negotiate for, because we just don't have that leverage. Same thing with Conor. He can do whatever he wants because of the amount of leverage he has, because of the amount of asses he puts into seats. It's really unfortunate to me that these athletes that have so much leverage don't use it to benefit all martial artists. Right. They just use it to benefit themselves and help their own pocketbooks, which I understand. Everybody's got to eat, you know. But I don't get it. If I was in that position, and people can say that I wouldn't, but I guarantee you I would. I guarantee you, when I get to that position, I will continue doing what I'm doing, and I will do it even more. Right. Even more. They will fucking hate me.
So, what do you think is the solution to all of this? The Ali Act?
It's got to be a multifaceted solution. Like the Ali Act helps. That gives us legal teeth, right? That gives us the ability to, okay, these guys are doing something shady. Okay, now we can sue you. Right. You know, we can take you to court. But that's not the be-all and end-all, because that still doesn't give us a unified voice to speak to the company with. I believe that mixed martial artists need a unified voice, but not just within UFC, because then that just tightens that grip and increases that monopoly, right? They still maintain the exclusive rights to those fighters. If all UFC fighters sign a CBA right now, Ali Act is null and void within the UFC. It's done, because now we would have to be employees, right? And if we're employees, then we can't be colored. We may get some benefits, we may get some things, but there will still be no competition in the market. And how are we going to raise the pay scales without real competition in the market? Even if we had a union with the UFC, okay, how do we get anything done? We'd have to strike, right? If they're not willing to do what we're saying, we go, okay, we want our minimum wage to be set at 50 grand. 50 grand flat. Anybody that fights in the UFC is getting a minimum $50,000. Okay, so they're like, fuck that, right? And then we're like, okay, well, we're gonna strike then, we're not gonna fight. If we strike, fighters need to eat. Most of us are already poor, right? So if we go and take all of us off the plate, nobody's fighting, I guarantee you that there's going to be a grip of scabs that will just walk across the line because they got to feed their family. Like me, I don't have daughters. I've set myself up with my own business now. I don't need to rely on the UFC. I refuse to completely rely on the UFC for income because it's just unstable and it gives them too much power and control over me. But a lot of fighters are in that situation where they are reliant on the UFC to put food on the table. So if you take the UFC off the plate, they're starving. So nobody's going to starve, especially if they've got kids and they've got a wife and they've got all these other people that are depending on them. They're going to have to put food on the table, right? So they're going to cross the line. So we'd have to have a strike fund. That's the only way our union within the UFC would work, is if we had a large strike fund so we can pay out guys something in order to stop them from crossing the line. We don't have that money. Where's that money going to come from? Right? We don't have that money. We haven't been paying into a union for a long time already. So I think that there needs to be competition in the market. So we still need a collective voice, but not to just bargain with the UFC. We need a collective voice to bargain with Bellator, to bargain with ONE FC, to bargain with UFC, and to bargain with any other promotions that come in and prove themselves to be worthy of being of access to that union of fighters, or association of fighters. So I think the best model is the Screen Actors Guild model, right, or ACTRA in Canada, where they're able to work with different productions, but they still remain that independent contractor status, you know, and they still are able to set, okay, minimum wage, okay, we have, they've got like workers' comp, they've got all these benefits and other things, but they're still able to move between promotion to promotion, right? So I think that's the model. I think that's the way to go. First, Ali Act, guaranteed, #1, Ali Act, because that allows us to move back and forth between promotions. And then we need to unify all the top martial artists in the world, all the top mixed martial artists in the world under some sort of collective group where we can all be like, okay, this is what we're getting paid. If you're not willing to pay us, none of us are working, you know, and they'll pay because they'll have to.
Okay, so finally, I know you have to leave.
Yeah, I gotta go soon.
Yeah, so I'll just wrap this up. So you said you were in India in 2000. When do you plan to come back? Because as you know, India is a growing market. UFC is interested in coming to India now.
Yeah.
Do you plan on coming back anytime soon?
I would love to come to India. I got a lot of things on my plate. I would just have to have a reason to come back to India. Like if there was like if I had a seminar or one of my fighters booked to fight there, or some sort of situation like say if they held the IMMAF World Championships next year or something like that. I'm guaranteed I'm there for sure. It's just the only real reason I travel right now. Right now I'm like tunnel vision on my career. I got a lot to do in a very short amount of time, so it's pretty much all I'm doing is career right now, whatever aspect of my career. So if it's a work trip, I'm going, guaranteed. If I get a fighter out there, if any of those things happen, I'm down.
All right, awesome. So thank you, Kajan.
Awesome. Thank you.
So Alan, how do you analyze the team's performance?
To be really honest, I am very, very happy with what the team has done in this World Championship, and in fact the goals that we had set out for the team, they have performed way, way, way better than that, and that's it. I am really happy. I'm really happy.
There must have been some kind of I don't know how to put it, but coming so close, 3 fighters, if anyone would have won their fights, could have finished in a podium finish. So is there any kind of, I would say, just what's going on? I
so
don't know what's
honest,
going on.
see, I've always said this. There's a very fine line between winning and losing, and when we came in so close to the quarters, like when we were fighting in the quarters, my game plan has always been the same. I asked the boys and girls to enjoy the fight and treat it as it comes. Fortunately, unfortunately, when the fights go into later rounds, the fights are going to get tougher, the fights are going to show on your body. And these kids, what they have done till now is exemplary. Nevertheless, we couldn't get into the medal rounds, but we came this far. So I think we've done a good job.
And one of the fighters, obviously, that a lot of people are watching is Nishigata.
Right.
At 18, again, she tried hard, but had to give up in the second round. So, what's next for her? What's next for someone like her?
Well, everyone who's been here in the Indian team, everyone who's been part of the team, there's always one thing for straight that I want to emphasize on is more competition, more training, and that's what we're going to go back to, because that is the only thing that's going to bring them up to another level. This time we made the quarters, next time we set the finals as our goal.
So does this serve as a motivation going forward?
Oh yes, it definitely does. In fact, this is the biggest motivation the Indian MMA scene could ever have. If the amateurs could come up here and do something like this against like 51 countries and stand out of the 250 odd participants or 250, 300, whatever number is there, these kids have done themselves greatly proud and the nation themselves.
So if you had to capture the emotions of the team, just encapsulate whatever has happened over the past couple of days, what would it be?
So I'll tell you something really funny, because everyone who fought on the team, they came up to me at the end of the fight. They said, "Sir, sorry sir, we couldn't do what you expected us to do." I said, "No, it wasn't that. I expected what I expected. You've done more than that." And then they come up to me and say, "Sir, you want to go back and train more." I've achieved my goal.
So again, one final message just for fans.
All Indian fans, please support this team, support this young team, support the Indian MMA movement. All these boys and girls who are fighting their heart out for the country, they take great pride in carrying that Indian flag. I take great pride in carrying that Indian flag. And all we need is support. Reach out to these people, reach out for sponsorships, reach out to these kids to help with their nutrition, reach out to these kids for their training programs. Come work with us, help us to build this team as one team for the nation, that's India.
All right, thank you, Alan.
Thank you.